All right, good morning, everyone. Welcome to TechCon 2025. Hopefully you all saw the keynote session earlier with Alex and Subhash on composable architecture and the hybrid iPaaS. This session, we're going to go into the integration as a service in a hybrid world. So basically everybody's living with applications everywhere. For questions, please go to the chat. We'll look at your questions as we go along and try to answer them in the chat. And then there's office hours later on today if we don't capture questions right now. There will be a poll, or there may be a poll during session 2, so pay attention to that in the chat. We hope this is an interesting session for you. It is for me. And I'm going to hand it over now to Dave Pemberton, who's going to lead us through the hybrid iPaaS and integration as a service. Thanks, Dave.
Thank you, Frank. Thank you. So I'm Dave, as Frank said. I'm a product manager at IBM, and I lead the web methods integration and iPaaS offerings. I've actually worked in the integration space for nearly 25 years now, and it's not just in the product team, but before that, I was an expert implementing complex integrations, architectures for many of the world's largest organizations. And I actually learned what works and what doesn't, how to approach integration, and really understood organizational needs for integration and all the requirements they have. And all that now really helps me to design and create the best possible integration products we've got for our clients. So I'm going to start by looking at some of the challenges around integration. And for those who saw the keynote, it'll give you a good scene set for what I'm going to go, because I'm going to go into a bit more detail into kind of the things you saw on the keynote. So firstly, right, what are the integration challenges today? It takes too long. Integration has always taken quite an amount of time, right? And it slows down organizations. And a lot of people allege that integration is a real choke point to innovation and transformation. And actually, that it really makes them fall behind the competition, and they can't keep up with the amount of work and applications that keep onboarding. The next one is we don't have enough skills, and we can't find enough skilled resources. And even if they wanted to get more people in an organization, the market for those skills is actually really difficult. It's difficult to even recruit people and find people to recruit with integration skills, let alone hold on to those people who you might have when you've got the headhunters circling around for the skills which are in demand. The third one, development is too expensive. What do we mean by this? It's more about the time, the effort, the people. It's forever upgrading the integration platform. It's intensive and it's costly in terms of the people and the time and effort you have to take to do these things and do these things. And then the last one, this is one of the major ones. Our integration approach isn't working anymore. It's really slowing us down. We've got agile innovation streams that are building agile applications, and often developers just ignore integration and do something point to point because they can, and because the integration takes too long. So what I'm going to do is dive into each of these a little bit more and give you a bit of a detail on how some of these things are addressed through the IBM hybrid iPaaS. So first, it just takes too long and it's too costly. Why is this, right? So today in most organizations, you tend to see integration set up as a central function where integration competence centers, integration center of excellences, that's a central team that provide integration services to projects. And these integration resources often aren't really considered as part of a development project. Rather, it's something on the side, a mysterious and very technical thing that needs special people to build integrations and provide integrations. And it's kind of something that we've created, a concept we've created in the IT business to make people think integration is special, and it really isn't. But in this pattern, when a development project needs an integration, this falls onto the backlog of the integration team, and they have to then complete that work along with all the other commitments. And in the meantime, the Agile Sprint team, these developers around the outside, I still have a commitment and a time deadline on their sprints, and they're waiting for this integration before they can pick up that user story. So they have to kind of either rely on the integration team to do these things, or typically what they do is then just take it into their own hands and build their integrations themselves. An integration takes too long, right? There's not enough resources at all, right? So we mentioned this just earlier. You cannot find enough integration resources on the market, and you cannot get enough resources to build these integrations fast enough. So if you've got the central development team, how can you then go quicker and go faster and keep up with the pace of the business? So I'm going to show you next a chart, a graphical representation, which talks about some of these challenges. Here you'll see across the bottom is the business benefits. So the benefit of the integration itself, and on the vertical axis, the complexity of the integration. And if you focus your eyes on the right-hand side of the chart, you'll see that integration specialists, those that are typically in those central teams, the integration centers of excellencies, tend to create the integrations in an organization. And they create integrations that are essential to the core operation of that business. Integrations such as taking payments or supply chain management or ERP or billing, anything that's mission critical to the organization, where if they fail or there's downtime, it can result in huge financial losses, security issues even, or operational disruptions. And we've got a number of clients where if their integration platform goes down, it's millions of dollars per second of revenue lost because the integration platform is not up. And that's why these integration specialists are seen as somebody who's skilled and expertise in these areas, because they work through all those requirements of making sure that it doesn't have downtime, making sure that it's mission critical and so on. But you'll notice that this is really only kind of 20% of the integrations that a business needs. You can see this 20% at the right hand side here, but what about all the others here that aren't being completed? Ones with less complexity, ones with less business benefits, but often ones that business desires because they might touch a small number of applications or business functions or business transformation. So how can we then achieve integration business benefit for the rest of this 80% of the integrations that a business needs? And these really are kind of what we talk about as the unfulfilled requirements. So how is this possible? Well, this is really where no-code, low-code, and composable integration platforms start to come on their own. And this is kind of where the integration platform as a service, or the iPaaS, came around in early kind of 2013. The aim was to lower entry barriers for integration and to really allow you to democratize integration creation, so that you're not just reliant now on these technical people on the right, these people with all the integration skills, but to enable others in the business to be able to create integrations and automations to make integration much more accessible, not just to developers, but also to a business technologist, a line of business user. And these line of business users are sometimes talked about as like a mythical person in an organization. And often people think of a business user as somebody who sits on the reception desk when you walk into the office. But that isn't who we're referring to here, right? You've got a lot of people in a business, such as data scientists or data engineers, security analysts, network and platform engineers, DBAs, and so on, who are all technical, aren't really integrators. And if we can democratize integration down to those people, then they can tackle integrations that they need for their own needs. There's one more point to kind of lead on this, and this stat comes from Gartner. If you look at the numbers on the slides, for every one integration specialist in an organization, there are 10 developers. So that's times 10 developers for the integration specialists. And the same scale applies then for developers through to people in the business technologies areas. So you've got one integration specialist for 10 developers, and for the 10 developers, you've got 100 business technologists. So this is where your scale can come in. This is where you can really start to expand and scale the integration creation out, which can create a huge productivity boost and go some way to answering the challenges about why integration takes too long, why we don't have enough resources. And you might think, really, is this the case? But I'll look at another model, and again, this comes from Gartner, which is the pace-layered application strategy. And this, you can see this as a way we can understand the different systems within enterprise application landscape and how businesses leverage them. And if you look at the bottom, these are the systems of records. And the systems of records are the core transactional systems, your ERP, your CRM, your financial systems, all those systems that are mission critical and essential for operations. Now those systems have very low change because they're typically in place for quite a long time. They don't vary much, and they don't go through change rigorously because of the consequences and the complexity of those in the organization. But because of the complexity, they're very high in governance. So to try and change these things and bring integration for these things takes a lot of time and effort and a lot of skills to make sure they're reliable. And that's why the integration specialist is firmly there. But as you step up the pace layer model to things like system differentiation, how to differentiate you from the competition and outperform competitors, or even systems of innovation, how you can innovate and focus on next generation capabilities in an organization, then you can see here that these change much more frequently. You will only change a system of record every 5 years, maybe 10 years, maybe 20 years, but you'll change systems of differentiation and innovation at a much quicker pace. And even systems of innovation, you can roll these out in agile sprint teams where you can put something out there after 30-day sprints and a month, try it out. If it fails, it doesn't matter. You can just start again and come back up. And it's those things where you can see developers and business technology starting to really build those integrations, because the pace of change increases, but there's much less governance. And you're going to do, if you get this wrong, it's less critical than getting wrong systems of record based integration. So this is why you can bring these things together. The next part then, our integration approach isn't working anymore. Why is the integration approach not working? Let's take a look first at a stat from Chief Martech. And this is really about application proliferation and the complexity it brings in the business. The number on the screen is 255 apps, and that is for a mid-market organization with between 501 and 2,500 employees. On average, there is 255 different applications in those organizations. And that number is actually staggering when you think about it, but it highlights the challenges that any organization faces when it comes to integration, because each of those applications could be a data silo, and trying to maintain consistent workflows across so many platforms becomes really difficult. If you think 255 is a lot, then wait until you go to a large enterprise. A large enterprise with over 2,500 employees, the average number of applications is 664, which is, unthinkable. And with that many applications in play, it's no wonder that integration becomes quite difficult, and you can get inefficiencies there. So that's kind of the stats itself. If you take those numbers and think about them a little deeper, what it actually means is companies add on average 6 applications every month. So these numbers continue to grow month by month by month. And as you saw in the keynotes, why are the applications growing? Well, that's because of the advancements in technology. We no longer kind of are in the era where applications take a long time to develop. If you look right at the right-hand side here, applications can be created much more quicker now, because you've got things like no-code application platforms that anybody can use to create an application. You've got AI, which can be used to create applications. So there's no surprise that by 2028, we're going to have another 1 billion applications. And of those 1 billion applications, organizations are going to adopt some of those. So integration and APIs are really the linchpin to be able to cope with these applications and these differences. And of course, all these applications, it's never been as complex as it is today. You've got challenges with API sprawl and governance challenges, because the rapid increase in applications and APIs has created much more complexity and governance issues and security risks. You've got hybrid multi-cloud deployments deployed across different clouds, different environments, public cloud, private cloud, SaaS environments. You've got multiple integration technologies. Many organizations have different ways of working integration. You've got data, application, APIs, B2B integration, you name it, they're all there. Along with the rise in AI, which is creating even more demand for integration, because AI needs integration to connect to the systems to get the data to feed the AI, so the AI can work with your data. So it's much more complicated than it ever was before. And to try and give you an understanding of why this is the case, right, I'm just going to walk through the timeline of integration quickly. So we start back in around the mid-1990s with EAI, for those who remember, or enterprise application integration. This was really point-to-point integrations, using things like, often got scaled up with things like message brokers. They use adapters and connectors and middleware. And typically it was focused on core enterprise systems like ERPs or CRM or a database. As you step forward then, you move to SOA, which was around loosely coupled services. This was around the era of a HTTP web services, SOAP, UDDI, and XML, and those sorts of things. There's a lot of focus here on design time governance. Then you move into the early to mid 2000s now, where you've got the enterprise service bus. And this is really where integration took off massively. An enterprise service bus really facilitated integration in a much more scalable way than EAI, with a bus sat in the middle that communicates everything through that bus and handles message transformation, processing, and so on. And if you look at this era here, the early 2000s, this is where methods came from. For example, Web Methods Integration Server, its first release was in 1998, and the IBM integration products, with the WebSphere integration products way back then, also came out around this time period. And then as you move forward towards around the 2010 mark, you've got API-led integration. This came about because of the rise of cloud platforms. So this created the birth of API management and API gateways, developer portals, runtime governance, and then scaling and governing APIs for complex, distributed, sometimes even microservice-based cloud architectures. And again, around here, you can think about things like API Connect, for example, or the Web Methods API management platform. And then moving on, around, again, kind of around the same time as the API integration, around 2010, integration providers started to provide microservice-based integrations, so small independent services deployed in the scales independently so that you can make these cloud ready and cloud deployable. And this really came accelerated around 2013 when containerization and Docker came about, that started to really emphasize the growth in DevOps and CI/CD. And this was more focused on like decentralized integration with things like REST and JSON, Kubernetes and Docker, and all these other things which come through that. And finally, we get to the iPaaS, which actually was around 2010, 2013. An iPaaS is really a cloud-based integration platform for integrating disparate cloud and sometimes on-premise applications. And it simplified integration to try and make it easier for people to use with things like pre-built connectors and recipes, and a focus on low code and no code. And next, we move to what is hybrid iPaaS. And this wasn't really recognized until around 2015 to 2018, around that time period. And this really extends the iPaaS concepts to enable processing not just inside the iPaaS itself, but in multiple remote locations, and really enables integrators to start to take control of data residency and legislation to run integrations closer to data wherever that was needed. And then last but not least is intelligent iPaaS. And intelligent iPaaS is kind of the newer concept about bringing AI into a hybrid iPaaS to start to make and change the way you think about an iPaaS and the way you use an iPaaS. You know, do you really need connectors anymore? Do you need recipes anymore if an AI can create those on the fly and on demand, and what that might change in terms of the iPaaS itself? And if I kind of chart this out, you can see EAI was custom coded point to point. The SOA and Enterprise Service Bus was the era of actually what became overly complex, monolithic, and difficult to manage. And this is why these technologies are kind of like dead now to an extent. They weren't very cloud friendly, and they typically failed due to its heavy reliance on complex governance and a need for enterprise-wide standardization, which created that central integration team, which created that choke point in the organization. And then we move on to the rise of iPaaS, the REST APIs and API management. And these are the more traditional iPaaSes that we talked about today, but they still require manual configuration, there's development involvement, they have static connectors, and you have to maintain these integrations as you move forward. And as API adoption surged, enterprises face API sprawl, where you've got now hundreds, thousands, if not tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands APIs that brings in governance issues and security risks to the organization. Then if we move towards the hybrid multi-cloud, this was really kind of shifting towards the cloud-based integrations themselves, so being able to build and deploy integrations across multiple endpoints managed through a single control plane. And then looking at the intelligent integration composition next, this is really about AI-driven API orchestration, where you've got AI agents continuously can optimize API calls, orchestrate APIs, manage dependencies, and enhance the performance of the integrations, and brings a big shift in developer productivity and flexibility, and really accelerates business outcomes. So one last thing about this, if I now take a look at how our customers and clients deploy integrations today, if I chart this out, you'll see here, I would estimate that if you look at this chart, kind of the bulk of the customers are still kind of in the areas of ESBs and API-led integrations. A number have started to adopt iPaaSes and grow, and the iPaaS trend has really grown along with the iPaaS market. But there are many organizations still that have an ESB deployed, and because they've leveraged so much effort and time building these integrations in place, and they've overlaid API-led integration on top of that, but they're firmly stuck in these areas. And this is kind of why they say that actually sometimes integration is not working for them anymore, because they want to move to things like microservice-based integrations or iPaaS and cloud-based integrations, but they feel trapped in terms of where they are because of the SOA and the API integration approaches. And you can see, based on the market forecast, the iPaaS is set to grow massively. Figures based on Gartner talk about a huge growth in the next 3 or 4 years. So we started with the challenges, right? But it takes too long. So how can we address those, right? Well, if you can bring an iPaaS in, then you can start to bring in business technologies developers, and you actually don't really need the integration center of excellence anymore, right? You can start to federate out integrations to different teams. You might have these to maintain those core systems of records ones still, but developers can now use the integration platforms and build their own integrations. And I'll kind of show you how we can achieve that in a little while. The important point about this is about enabling self-service integration for business technologists and developers. So it's no longer you have to go and ask an integration team to build this. You can build it yourself in the integration platform in a way that you understand. The most important point about that is it still has to be governed by those integration specialists, because those are the people that kind of need to manage and govern that platform. On the complexity as well, I talked about multi-cloud a little, and here you'll see a stat from a State of the Cloud report by Flexera, and you'll see here that 89% of enterprises have a multi-cloud strategy, which is quite a large number. And you can see there's a very small number with a single private, 1%, or 10% single public. And you could bet that single public is probably startups, and single private is probably maybe some financial institutions or government organizations where they just got single private cloud. If you take a look at that 89%, how does that break down, right? So that breaks down into 73% hybrid cloud, 14% multiple public, and 2% multiple private. So you can see the most common strategy by a long way is hybrid cloud, a mixture of public cloud, private cloud, on-premise, and so on. And therefore, you need an integration approach that can work in all those elements. And if you look a little bit deeper into the survey data, there's some insights you can glean from this as well. So if I group the first one, right, managing cloud spend, it's always the single biggest challenge for any organization who's adopting the cloud, how to manage this. And this impacts decisions on how applications are developed and purchased and managed. People realize now cloud comes at a cost. It's not free. So that's always number one in the list every year. And that's really about spend optimization. But here next, you can then see now that multi-cloud is really reality, but this brings those challenges that I kind of talked about a little bit. So your lack of resource and expertise in cloud, in networking, in security over multiple networks. And then looking down the bottom, managing multi-cloud is a real issue for organizations, along with cloud migration. How can I move workloads to the cloud? How can I shift systems to SaaS-based systems? And what does that do to the rest of my architecture and my integrations that I've got in place already? So you see, it kind of gives you the same problems that you saw with integration, right? A lack of resource and expertise, even in the multi-cloud space. And the last part here really shows the changing role of central IT. So back to those central organizational functions like the central integration function. Even central IT's role is changing. You can see, in fact, central IT often manages things like software licenses and so on. But you can see governance becomes important, compliance because of all the different environments and different systems. But the most interesting one, again, is kind of what I mentioned in terms of democratized integration, managing the responsibility between central teams and business units, because business units can now buy software. Business units can purchase SaaS-based systems easily. So the central cloud team has to control over all those things together, bring those things together. So multi-cloud is huge, and actually, sadly, many integration products don't really help in this area either. Rather, they add more complexity. So what about IBM's intelligent hybrid iPaaS? Right? How can this help us to achieve some of these things? So firstly, we talk about the hybrid iPaaS as unified, and I'm going to try and explain this a little bit more for you as well and give you a bit of a deeper insight into what this means. Unified means it's an integration platform as a service with a single common interface, but with a control plane to manage across the multiple integration types. So you can see, for example, here, application integration, moving my CRM or my sales leads into my marketing system, for example. That's an example of application integration. Or B2B, I take EDI orders from a system and have to create shipments from them and send that somewhere else, or Swift payments in banks and financial institutions. File movements, files are going nowhere. I kind of wish they would go away to an extent, but they're never going to go away, right? Every organization still moves around files and uses files for various different ways of working. And I've even worked at things like financial clearinghouses where they rely on CSV files to move through the data and process all the clearance processes itself. So files is also an important part of integration that will not really go away for quite a long time, if ever. On the top left, then we've got APIs. APIs are a fundamental part of integration and a fundamental part of any architecture now. And then last but not least, events, business events. How can you listen to business events and help enterprises use those events to drive any of these other parts and pull all those strings together? This is what we mean by a unified iPaaS. And this really helps to kind of clean up some of the chaos that we kind of went through. Having a unified approach to integration really reduces the rework. It saves time building integrations. It eliminates the siloed data that you get that really hampers the growth of an organization. And it really aims to address the many facets of integration to allow anyone to stay agile. What's really important about this, right, is if you look at this slide next, you can see the unified integration product in the middle. But down each of the sides, you'll see all the different components across the IBM estate that make the part of this product. So API Connect, WebMethods API Gateway, the API Developer Portal, the API Studio, the Event Automation or the Event Endpoint Management Platform, IBM MQ, and then on the right, App Connect, WebMethods Integration, WebMethods B2B, the VAN, WebMethods MFT, and even WebMethods Messaging all together. So all of these parts all form part of the hybrid iPaaS, but they're governed by a central control plane. And I'll give you a bit of insight into that in a couple of slides down. And that central control plane enables you to work across any of these pieces. And down each of the sides here, you'll see the intelligence. So we've fused this with AI to be able to make it easy for people to work across individuals or across all these components together to make it easier for you to start to use the integration stack and really unleash this and let you move much more quickly, much faster. So when we first developed our iPaaS back in 2013, like many other iPaaS platforms today, we had one experience and tried to blend this towards all users. So to take a product that you can build on one interface and then allow a user to use this and then give this to an integration specialist, a business technologist, or a developer. And what we found was that nobody was happy. it was like the squeezed middle. You've got the business technology, which just says, it's still too complicated for me, I can't use this, I don't understand it. The developer just says, God, I really hate developing something in the web. I just want to use the VS Code or whatever IDE I like to use. And the integration specialist said, it's just too simplistic, right? This is a toy. It doesn't give me what I want. So the first iPaaSes that were created didn't really answer the question for any of those users. So what we did was listen to our users to understand the needs, and then create what we call a multi-persona, multifunctional iPaaS. And this multi-persona iPaaS brings individual perspectives focused on the needs and the skills of the users. So, for example, here you'll see on the top left our no-code workflow. Even the name was carefully selected to appeal to a business user. So a no-code workflow, and it's got simple left to right canvas and a drag and drop and a simplified mapper for transforming data. Whereas in the middle, you see the low-code flow service, which is much more programmatic. It's top to bottom. It's conditional logic, much like an integration or developer would recognize things like if then else statements and while loops and all the things that you do as a developer itself. And this makes this focus achievable for both an integrator and a developer, whereas in the past, integration products of old had special constructs that developers didn't understand and couldn't use. And then down the bottom, we've also allowed developers to build integrations offline in IDE, so they can develop and test them and then promote them through into the iPaaS through DevOps processes like any other piece of work. And they can write integrations in an orchestrated language like the flow you see here, or even write those as Java as you see in the screenshot. However anyone works, right, for it to be successful, the iPaaS has to fit with the needs of the users to make them work. And every asset you create inside the iPaaS is able to be composed across all those capabilities. So here we look at the business technologies view, which is the left to right canvas view. And a business technologist can compose an automation, a workflow from the capabilities provided by the iPaaS out the box. So all of the hundreds of connectors you see down here for pre-built systems. But if an integration specialist has created some low-code integration down the bottom or something else, or some coded integration, the business technologies can even use those as part of their integration up here to orchestrate those things together. Equally, they can pull in things like APIs from the API platforms, or events or messaging, B2B assets, files, and so on, to be able to build other integrations. And it's exactly the same for the more development-focused people as well. The development-focused people are still working now in a developer-focused way, but they can still build all these assets and bring those assets into the integration product as they work. So it doesn't matter if they want to use something that an integration specialist has built, or they've got pre-built leverage integrations they built on their integration platform in the past. And that is a hugely important aspect, right? So we created the multi-persona experience to enable no-code, low-code, and development, and push that towards a target to allow the platform to be able to scale out to those things and make integration possible at a quicker pace. Now, the important point here is the existing integrations, because if you are sat there with your ESB or your SRA-based integrations or your API-led integrations, and you've spent 10, 20, 30 man years building these things out, whatever it may be, then you can't suddenly switch to an iPaaS and then expect you to throw those things away. So the one thing that we really focused on when we were putting the iPaaS together was to allow organizations to leverage their existing integrations, so that if you spent hours and months and years building integrations, you can also bring those straight into the iPaaS and use those as well. Whether those integrations are from App Connect, whether those are integrations of web methods, or in the future, any other runtime that provides integration. So this is kind of how we can compose them all together and provide an experience to a user to allow them to work faster. So to scale out, to democratize to business users and developers to get the integrations built faster. All right, the next part then is around central control and distributed execution. So one of the things about the iPaaS is it allows you to build and distribute integrations through a complex hybrid landscape. And this was something a key architectural capability we created that we called central control distributed execution, which allows us to deploy integration runtimes and allocate integration runtimes, again, whether it's web methods or app connect, or whatever it may be, to run different parts of an overall integration. So not just run one part, run different parts. And if we take a look at this here, and I'll pull this out, then typically, if you look at a typical deployment, right, any organization has the iPaaS sat in the middle, but you've got private cloud running in multiple locations. You've got public cloud running in multiple locations, and SaaS and on-premises running in multiple locations around the world. So how can an iPaaS help in these areas? And this is where the term hybrid iPaaS came from, where initially it was about bridging the SaaS runtimes for an iPaaS with self-hosted runtimes, and that creates the intersection as a hybrid iPaaS. But if you start to bring more than one runtime together, right, which is typically the case, right, it's not just on-premises. You've got PaaS, platform as a service, running integrations, or any other Azure, AWS, Alibaba, whatever it may be, running different runtimes. You tend to have more than one deployment, especially if you're a large enterprise, because you're distributing geographically in EMEA or in the US and so on. And here you'll see then the intersection of all those is the hybrid multi-cloud iPaaS. And of course, this can get really complicated as well, right? It's not just one of these things, right? You'll find you might have many deployed in many different locations around the world. So how do you cope with the complexity of all these things and make this work? And how does an iPaaS help you? So traditionally, a standard iPaaS processes everything inside the iPaaS runtime itself. So your integration starts inside the iPaaS. It will reach into your on-premise, and you'd have to open up a firewall to allow that to come in to get some data from a database. Then it might go to an AWS service after, and so on. But it means your data is transferring from your on-premise into the cloud, being processed, and then going back up and down and doing other things to somewhere else. That's how traditional iPaaS worked. Then some iPaaS is brought in like a proxy application, and the proxy application was a way to make it easier to connect to your on-premise environment, where you could deploy the proxy app, and it allowed you an easy route through from the iPaaS to the on-premise without having to open up the firewall. But in essence, it still transferred the data back into the iPaaS itself. So what about an intelligent hybrid iPaaS? How does that work, and how is that different? So here you can see, for example, if I'm calling a cloud service, I can do that straight from the iPaaS runtime inside AWS or Azure or IBM Cloud, whatever that may be. And that can make the call down to the cloud service, can return the data back, all without ingressing into your network. But there are times when you might need to call, for example, a mainframe system that you've got in your self-hosted on-premises environment. And from there, the iPaaS needs to make a call to that mainframe, but how can it do that point there? And this mainframe might have sensitive data processing or financial transactions or whatever it may be. So that an intelligent hybrid iPaaS allows you to move the processing down into your own on-premise environment as well. So the whole integration can process parts in different locations, whether that's in the iPaaS runtime, in your own deployed runtimes, in your on-premise environment, or in the self-hosted AWS runtime, so able to make all these things work together. And it's the control plane which really brings these parts together, enables us to be able to do this, to bring App Connect, Web Methods, API Connect, Web Methods, API Management, and any other runtime inside the iPaaS. And this is a screenshot of what that control plane looks like today, where you can see ACE integrations running inside the iPaaS, Web Methods integration runtimes running inside the iPaaS, and then down below here, different runtimes running outside of the iPaaS, whether that's ACE or Web Methods, and so on. And these can be viewed as cards, they can be viewed as a list, and they can be viewed as a graph view. So you can get a bigger picture when you've got many thousands of runtimes like a number of our clients have. And once you've created and provisioned these runtimes, which you can do right from here, then how do you build integrations that can use these things together? Back to this picture here. So this here is a use case from a bank for what we call roundup saver, where every transaction you take has fractional amounts of money. If you move those fractional amounts of money into a savings account, eventually you should get rich from the fractional amounts of money, which was it was Richard Pryor in Superman 2, right? That bought a big supercomputer with all the money made by siphoning transactions from banks. So here you can see we can build decisional logic inside these orchestrations, inside these workflows. And here you can see branches between the US, the UK, the EU, and anywhere else in the world. And each of those different actions in this integration here can come from web methods like these, or from App Connect like this. So you can see, for example, here in the US, we call the web methods integration to process EU accounts. We do the same in the UK, but in the EU, we use an App Connect integration to process the EU account because that entity in the EU uses App Connects. And you can also see things like calls to tax authorities via B2B to give you kind of a joined up perspective of how this iPaaS works as a whole. So it's not just individual integrations that call out to different endpoints. They also can use the B2B products to send tax entries via Swift or whatever it may be through EDI. The important point here is that when I run this integration here, this step, the US or the UK account, it does not run the iPaaS. That whole part of that integration, which is another integration itself, runs back in that remote environment. So back on the previous picture here, this one, the integration runs right down here. So it can control what data comes back from that and what data is sent back to the cloud, and can also do multiple steps of processing down here to be able to complete through a financial transaction, just return back a status code, for example. So this is how we can use the control plane to build a single orchestration. Now, if I'm using API management maybe, or B2B or integration, and I'm using this over multiple different locations with complex integrations, it sounds like an operational nightmare to be able to understand how the heck all this thing works. So we thought about that as well, and we created what we called end-to-end monitoring analytics. This is based around OpenTelemetry, the standard for kind of the metrics and trace monitoring, and this really provides visibility from initiation of an integration through to completion, regardless of what components it flows through, the communication protocols, document formats, and it allows you to trace the transaction in real time. And then this allows the business to really identify, resolve, and root cause issues quickly to be able to maintain their operations and maintain their uptime requirements. And end-to-end monitoring brings huge transparency and accountability with detailed tracking of every transaction. And you can click on any one of these locations. It will take you into the full breakdown of the entire steps of those integrations. So you'll see it going from integration to B2B, back to integration, to API management, and so on. And you can step in all those things and find the exact point of failure. If you find a failure, when you click on the individual step which has the failure in, it will take you right to the login page of B2B or integration or API, whatever it may be, to let you really dig deep into what's caused that failure so you can correct it quickly. I said it uses OpenTelemetry, and that also means that when I deploy integration runtimes in my own data centers, in my own environments, in my own clouds, those runtimes also propagate the data back to end-to-end monitoring here. So you can see those things also as in the cloud as a joined up picture, because you're mixing cloud runtimes, self-hosted runtimes together. This gives you one single way to understand the complete end-to-end transaction flow as it runs through an organization. I mentioned about developers and about developers wanting to be able to use their IDs as well. And this is something that we coined the phrase of develop anywhere, deploy anywhere, which is how you can let people use the tools that they're most familiar with. And actually, I've spent quite a lot of time on flights in my career, and trying to use a cloud system in a flight is really painful, no matter how good the Wi-Fi is on the flight, because they drop it in and out, it's difficult to work. But if you can work with an offline IDE, then you can build something on the flight and make use of those hours that you're sat there with, and then you can push that back into the iPaaS through Git repositories to allow you to build and deploy those anywhere. And this is really around then now stopping the duplicate effort, right? Some people building things in an IDE, some people building things in the cloud, having them all disconnected, but having them all work together. As I said, this works through version control, Git repository, and those sorts of things, where I can build any one of these integration types and push that into the version control system, or build it in my IDE, or build the Java version of my IDE, and push those into the version control system, and then have the iPaaS work with all those assets together to provide all those things in one place. So that's kind of how we can enable people to work in the environment that they choose and bring those things together. This is also important for skills, because if you've got an integration platform that you've been using for the last 10 years or so, you'll be very familiar with how that works inside the IDE. And you may not want to adopt a web interface way of working inside the iPaaS. So it allows existing people to still use the way they worked before, but to bring in new users that can use the different perspectives at the top to allow them to start building integrations in the way they like. So that's kind of how then you can kind of help to bring more user personas into the iPaaS as well. Next, I'll just talk about events a little. So to enable composable business architectures, you have to be able to think in the way business works. And a business does not work in, or a business user doesn't work in the idea of APIs, right? They don't understand really APIs as a business user, but what they do understand is business events. I've got a new order that comes in. I've got something that reduces the stock. They're all events in a purchase flow, as an example. So if you can start to use those events, then you can start to assemble integrations much more quickly and create more real-time integrations as well, because now you're not reliant on somebody calling a system. You're now reliant on an event coming from that system. You can combine with things like APIs or integration, those sorts of things, to really assemble a more complex integration flow together, but simplified in a way that business users can achieve these things. And how do we do that, right? So again, this here is an invoicing order system actually here. So you can see across the top, right, when somebody receives an order, then it gets the customer information from the order, creates a picking order, then it creates a shipping order, and then it sends the invoice and the order gets fulfilled through the shipping. But actually behind the scenes, that's realizing a number of different systems, right? So your customer management system, your order management system, inventory management, logistics, and finance and billing. And if you scan out how this might work, you can see the order received comes from the order management system. So an events push from the order management system that starts off business automation. Then if they want to get the customer information, that comes from an API in the customer management system. And then to pick the order, that calls an API in the order picking system, which inventory management, which raises an event to create the shipping order, which then goes via an API to logistics, which raises an event to send an invoice, which calls an API in the finance and billing system to actually create that invoice and send it out. This is how then you can use events to achieve these things. And inside the iPaaS, we now use IBM's event endpoint management. And what you're seeing here is the event endpoint management platform that really allows our users to start to use things like Kafka and topics, where they can stream through events into Kafka as a streaming platform, but then use event endpoint management to control access to and information that comes from these things and for discovery. So if you use Kafka today, it's quite difficult to understand what's flowing through the platform, but you can bridge through event endpoint management and start to catalog all the events that come through, and that makes them discoverable. If they're discoverable, then you can know the types, and therefore a business can come along and can find a particular event. The one behind here is mobile location, and they can find that event and then start to use that. But you also need access, and people can create access policies to control who can see these, because otherwise Kafka can be a free-for-all. So with event endpoint management, it's like an API gateway, but for events through Kafka. So I can create policies to create approvals, to filter out messages that I'm not interested in, or even to do things like redact data. So imagine this is sending through, I don't know, locations of people and their IMEI number from a telephone, right? You shouldn't let people see those things. So I can create policies that can redact data and then give people access to be able to start to build integrations around these events and use those things through the integration platform in a much more easier way that allows me to do event-driven architecture and event-based integrations much more easily now, but with the governance and controls about who can see and who can use what. And lastly, I talked about the intelligence part. So here I'm going to go a little bit into kind of how the iPaaS becomes intelligent. So because AI has been massive and it's grown hugely in the last 3-4 years, and a lot of people think about AI as things like creation, because the generative AI that's come along is about helping you create things and helping you think faster and do things in a quicker way. And that's certainly one part of an intelligent iPaaS, so you to do things like create integrations using AI easily, or create connectors. I don't have to have a connector to a system to be able to do that. Now I can use an AI to create the connector to my own built system, as an example. and AI can do those things for you as well. But it's also about making things easier for less skilled people. So line of business users, how can they use AI to understand the platform, or how can they use AI to create those integrations that they need? And also it's things around things like proactive monitoring and alerting of integrations. When something goes wrong, the AI can monitor and can fix, if you like, those issues. So it can sit there, watch a platform, detect when something's happened, and can fix those issues if you like, and offer you a way to fix it. But it could also become proactive at some point, where it can start to monitor the integrations. It could tell when something's going to fail, and proactively reach out to somebody and say, this integration might fail at this point in time. I think I should take action. Do you want me to do this? And the important thing about the AI is it has to be transparent. It has to work with the user and be part of the user experience to be able to do those things. And I'm going to show you kind of how this works inside the iPaaS a little bit. So here you'll see had like a landing page where you log into the iPaaS, and here you can see what you want to do today, and you can type in a prompt. So in this example, it's when a Salesforce opportunity is created, then create the opportunity in Marketo, and as soon as they start the conversation, the AI kicks in with the way it works, and you'll see it remains transparent. So the first thing it does is provide a plan on how it's going to create that integration, and then asks if you're okay with that plan. So you can see it's going to create a project of some sort to house that integration, figure out what triggers the integration and what the integration needs to do, to figure out figure out how it can connect to the account. So if it's going to take Salesforce and Marketo, it needs ways to talk to those systems and accounts. It's going to map the data between them and then test it and then deploy it. If you press start, then it will take you to the integration product and go through all the whole process. This jumps forward a few steps, but you can see here, for example, that it's generated the integration. It triggers on a Salesforce and moves to Marketo, but then also creates mapping suggestions and lets you review those mappings. If you press review, you'll see it will bring up the mapper. This is the business friendly mapper, and here it will show you which maps it's created as part of your process. So to kind of wrap all this up, I just want to give you kind of the three takeaways, right, that are important to me and hopefully all you. The evolution of integration has transitioned through several key phases, and again, organizations are actually struggling through that transition because integration has gone from ESB to SOA to things like microservice-based integrations and iPaaS and so on. And these really change the way that businesses connect and work and automate and even secure their digital ecosystems. The intelligent hybrid iPaaS, as I've shown you, provides a multifunction, multi-persona integration capabilities across all those different types. And it's underpinned by transparent AI agents. So those AI agents work behind the scenes, not just in integration, but inside API, inside B2B, inside events, inside files, to be able to do the work that's asked of the AI. And that agent fulfills those obligations when you ask it to work and do those things, to intelligently select and then even orchestrate API calls. And then the last part is around the hybrid part. You saw already that hybrid integration architectures are the biggest type of architecture that exists right now. Every organization, 89%, applies a hybrid hybrid cloud architecture, and therefore to be able to build integrations that can use hybrid endpoints through either reverse execution or even things like advanced cloud interconnections. So things like private links, for example. All those aspects are important in an iPaaS because they give you the highest possible throughput with the lowest possible latency. And the way we've architected the IBM iPaaS itself is to make all those things possible to allow you to achieve your integration needs and allow you to democratize integration through things like developers and citizen and business technologies across those complex multi-cloud environments. So with that, I'll say thank you. And then I don't know if we've got any more questions that were unanswered. Tam?
We have one question, Dave, in the chat window that is related to when this IBM hybrid iPaaS trial will be available. Okay,
good question. So actually, so the IBM hybrid iPaaS itself exists already in some form because it came from the WebMethods acquisition. But a lot of the work we've done to bring in the IBM products to bring in things like App Connects and API Connects and those sort of products. We are actually going through a public preview at the end of March, where we will do the first release, and we'll put that in the hands of people to be able to try and use this. It's a small preview, so we're going to handpick the customers and the clients and let them try this out, get feedback, and then the full release of the iPaaS with the IBM products inside for everybody who wants to adopt it will be in the June timeframe. So that kind of gives you a bit of an idea. The free trial itself for the iPaaS, you can actually get hold of a free trial right now on the integration side, but you won't be able to use the IBM products inside that. As we move forward more towards the release date, kind of post Q1 and sometime Q2, we'll probably make a wider free trial available that includes some of the aspects that you've seen around things like bringing in App Connects and API Connects and those sorts of things. All right. Also, the session poll is now live on the channel, so please do fill out that poll. Feedback is always great, and we love our feedback. Any more questions, Tom?
Nothing more, Dave.
Okay, awesome. Well, I hope you found that interesting. I hope you understand what the iPaaS is. Later on this evening, we've got the office hours, and if people do have more questions after you've sat and thought about this and heard some of the sessions, I'll be in the office hours session along with the other presenters today, so please do come along to the office hours session later on and bring your questions there as well, and we can ask those in person. With that, I'll say thank you, and thank you for attending and listening.